I just played a board game with Claude and my mind is blown. In case you haven't heard of it, there's a popular video that went around called Claude Plays Pokemon. And in that video, they used the new Claude model to let Claude remote control one of the classic Game Boy Color Pokemon games. And they gave it the ability to press up, down, and select so that it could be completely autonomous. And it did well in some areas, and it got stuck on a level and it was kind of wandering around and stuck in trees. That was pretty amazing. So I had this idea, what if I used Claude to play a two-player game with me? Enter King of Tokyo Duel. Now this game is a board game and it's for two players. It's based on the very popular King of Tokyo series. This version is two-player only. So I thought I would get Claude to play online with me and see how far I could go with Claude getting to an autonomous state. Ideally, I would want Claude to play completely autonomous without any input from me. The platform that I used is called Board Game Arena. Board Game Arena has many popular board games represented in online form, and you can play asynchronously with other people. And so I thought as a first pass, I would get Claude to play using this interface and see how far I could get. Now on the right-hand side, I have my chat with Claude, and on the left-hand side, this is a replay of the game that I played with Claude. So this is one of the really nice features of Board Game Arena, is that any game that you play, they keep the entire transcript of the game around for a while, and you can go play by play and look at how the game unfolded. So I want to show some highlights here, because the big spoiler alert, the TLDR, is that Claude did very well. I ended up winning, Claude came very close. But what really impressed me was how the current model 3.75 was able to ingest and understand the rules and then play the game with some prompting from me. Now I'd love to get to a next iteration where maybe using the Claude API and some sort of interface like Selenium, Claude could be completely autonomous. In this case, I had to prompt Claude and describe what was going on in the game, but you'll see a little further down that I was able to make Claude more and more autonomous. So let's start at the beginning. The very first thing was I gave it this prompt saying, I'm going to give you the rules and I want you to play that game with me. And I uploaded the rules that I just showed earlier, and here they are. One thing I want to point out here is that these rules are highly stylized for human ingestion. So if you look, like human reading and comprehension. So if you look here, it's kind of broken up into these boxes. There's stylized numbers about how many monster boards there are. The dice are kind of, at odd angles. The different markers are shown here. It's kind of like a mix of photorealistic and comic style. So the very first thing that impressed me here is that Claude was able to produce a summary of the rules of the game that were very coherent, and I wish there were timestamps on each of these interactions. I would say it took about 5 seconds for Claude to respond with this summary. So now's a good time to introduce you to this game so that we can go through the gameplay and you can see how Claude did. So, King of Tokyo Duel, it's a two-player game. Each player controls a monster, and there's a number of different ways to win. One is to reduce the rival's life points to 0. Another is that there are these two markers. One is called fame, one's called destruction. And if you can move the marker all the way over onto your victory space, then you win. The markers both start in the middle, so you kind of have a tug of war with these two markers. Also, there are spotlight zones, and if you can get both markers into that special spotlight zone, that's another way to win. So either getting one marker all the way over to one side or getting both markers into this spotlight zone. And this is pictured right here. So the fame and the destruction markers start in the middle. If you can pull one of them all the way over to the victory space on your side, then you win. Or if you notice, there are these highlighted zones. So if you can pull both of them into these highlighted zones, then you can also win. So it's either pulling both markers, let's see, 3 spaces over from where you start, or pulling one marker 6, 7 spaces over from where you start. All right, so Claude totally got that. Then each turn follows this structure. You roll the dice up to 3 times, choosing which you're going to keep after each roll. Then you resolve the dice according to the symbols, and the symbols are smash, heal, energy, fame, destruction, or special power. There are also these things called power cards, and you can buy power cards and they cost a certain amount of energy cubes, or instead of buying a power card, you can gain 1 energy and then you end your turn. And then Claude gives this overview of the different dice symbols, and one of the things that I really like here, it made me laugh, is that it selected these existing icons like in the common character set of icons to represent each of these, and it did a really good job. If we look at, let's see if we have, here's a picture of the cubes and the different faces that they can have. And Claude did a really good job of selecting faces or icons to represent any of these. And these are almost exactly what's on the face, like energy, fame, destruction, special power. The one that, and heal. The one that made me laugh a little bit is that it chose the paw prints to represent the smash, which is this kind of claw marker over here. But I thought that was a good representation, and I thought it was pretty intuitive that it picked that particular icon. Okay, so it said, I'd be happy to play with you. Which monster will you be playing as? Now, what I did over here on the left, on the actual gameplay, is I selected a monster for Claude. So I selected Alienoid for myself, that's the one in the upper left, and I chose Gigasaur for Claude. And you can see that as I go through the gameplay here. So these are the first couple of clicks where you've chosen your monster, and now we're into the turn-based aspect of the game. And by the way, when you choose to do one of these replays on Board Game Arena, you choose the player's perspective that you want to step through the game on. And so UID 0 here is the Claude character. So we're stepping through all of Claude's turns, and you'll see my turns as well, but the game board and everything else is from Claude's perspective. I told Claude that Claude would go first, and I'll tell you your dice roll, and you can tell me what you want to keep or what you want to re-roll. So I'm telling Claude that I'm gonna do all this for Claude and then give the answer. And I'm trying, you might be able to tell here, I'm trying to kind of not anthropomorphize Claude and assign a gender to Claude, but I'm sure I'm going to slip up a few times as we go here. So Claude responds back that it understands how it's going to be playing. It's playing Gigasaur. It understands the special power that Gigasaur has from its play card. And it has the blockbuster special power that allows it to pull 1 fame or 1 destruction when it gets 2 of the special power symbols. So again, from context, when I told Claude that its character was Gigasaur, I'm assuming it referred to the instructions and was able to parse out what its special power was. But again, pretty sophisticated right out of the gate. All right, so I started by describing what it rolled, and you can see up here that it rolled, what I told it is you rolled a smash, a heal, and 3 energy. And Claude said, I'll keep the 3 energy since it'll help me get power cards. I'll re-roll the smash and the heal. And so we're looking at the first re-roll. The result of that is that it got now a fame and a special token, but also up to this point I'd forgotten to tell Claude about the 3 power cards. So I kind of interrupted the game flow here before I let the reroll happen, and I said I described these 3 cards, and I described it in a way that I thought would provide all the information. So I said the first card is called Monster Coaster. It costs 7 energy. It's a discard type. There are 2 types, discard or keep. And I described what it allows you to do. It allows you to pull destruction 3 spaces. Now these cards, there's something like 50 of them, and they are not completely enumerated in the instructions in the play manual, so I thought that I needed to describe them to Claude. So I described each of these 3 cards, you can see over here on the left, and then Claude said that it understood the interesting options, but that it was going to continue rolling. Okay, so now on its second roll, it rolled 2 dice. They're now showing fame and special power. So that's where we are now. This is the result of the second roll. Claude understands what it has. And here's the first kind of, I don't know, training moment for Claude, where it said, I'll re-roll nothing and keep all my current dice. Now then I responded, one other thought before you finish your turn, since you have 1 roll left, you could keep the special power die and re-roll the fame die, and if it comes up as a second special power die, then it would get that special power in addition to the 3 energy cubes. So Claude responds, you make an excellent point, at, super positive like all of the models are. And so I did that final roll, and then it came up with this. So I said your final roll came up with an additional energy on the final die. So Claude acknowledges what its final outcome is. It realizes that it's going to get 4 energy cubes. Claude is now choosing to just gain 1 more energy cube since it doesn't have enough to purchase the card that it wants. Now, it says I'll gain more energy cubes since I still don't have enough to purchase any of the available cards. Claude did have enough to purchase Utter Destruction, but it didn't realize that, and I didn't correct it. So it is going to finish its turn with 5 energy cubes, and we can see that down here when I go to end turn, that gives Claude an additional energy cube for a total of 5. So it knows how many cubes it has. I didn't correct it that it could have bought this Utter Destruction card, but we moved on. All right, now I didn't need to do this, but I started describing my rolls to Claude. I was curious to see what Claude would do, and interestingly enough, Claude starts analyzing my roll and telling me what I can do with my roll. I did indicate it's telling me I could convert them into fame or destruction. I said it really won't be useful for me to convert them to fame or destruction dice, as I need a total of 3. You need a total of 3 of either fame or destruction in order to pull the marker, and so I said that wouldn't be enough. So I'm kind of correcting Claude along the way. Now, I don't know enough to know if Claude is learning really as we're going here, if Claude really has like the context for the game, but I will say it seems like I needed to correct it less and less as the game went on. And then we go on to Claude's turn. Now, I'm not going to go through every single turn, but I do want to get to a certain point and highlight some of the interesting things that evolve. So I'm going to scroll forward in the conversation here, and then I'll click on the replay to catch up to where I am. I did want to highlight here, here's where Claude has enough, or recognizes that it has enough energy to buy the Utter Destruction card. Throughout the game, Claude was kind of off by 1 on the stats, and toward the end of the game it seemed like it was consistently getting it right, but it took a little while. So, for instance, Claude says my life points are now at 9, they're actually at 10, so there's like off by 1s on how much life he has left and how many cubes he has left a number of times throughout the game. I'm trying to kind of not anthropomorphize Claude and assign a gender to Claude. He buys the Utter Destruction card, and so I manage that for him. So here's the point at which he can buy a card or end his turn, and I purchase the Utter Destruction card. Now, he could have confirmed, or he could have bought a different card, but I didn't correct him or advise Claude in any way. So he used the 8 energy cubes to buy the Utter Destruction card for 4 energy. It'll give a powerful effect. I will point out that throughout the rest of the game, Claude never actually used that card or tried to use that card. If you can roll so that you have all of the 6 different faces, then you get a very powerful effect. You get to pull 2 destruction, pull 2 fame, and give 2 damage to your rival. Claude never actually used that. Now, There's a whole other part of the game where there's, or facet of the game with these buzz tokens, and I'd completely forgotten to talk about that. And so I said, before I take my next turn, you received a buzz token, and I said it's a single space buzz token with a die symbol on it. Claude responds, thanks for reminding me about buzz token. It again picks a proper icon to represent the symbol that's on that buzz token, which is a die picture. Claude picks where it's going to place that buzz token, and it is in the correct place. So for Claude, he's going to be pulling this fame marker toward this side of the board, and so it makes sense that he's going to place the buzz token on the next space that he would pull it. And what happens is when it pulls that marker onto that buzz token, he'll get a die marker, which will give him an extra die in another turn. So that's the right place to put it. You can put the buzz token anywhere along the track. You can switch it to the destruction track. He chose to put it on where he'll be pulling the marker. Up until this point, I was describing to Claude the outcome of the rolls. And so I'd say you got 2 smash, 2 fame, 1 heal, 1 energy. Solid first roll, I'll keep the smash, etc. Now what I said is, here's an image of the outcome of your second roll. What I did was I pasted in, I did a screenshot of the second roll, and I said, here's an image of your second roll. I didn't give it anything else. And it said, I see the results of my second roll. I now have 2 fame, 2 smash, 1 destruction, and 1 smash. So 2 fame, 2 smash, 1 destruction, and 1 smash. It identified the roll from the picture without any additional input from me. So I certainly could have been doing this the whole time and I didn't realize it. I was just describing it. So from here on in, I just pasted the image of the roll, and it was able to identify not only what it rolled, but what was locked and what was a new roll. Claude said, I'll just re-roll the destruction die and try for another fame die. So I say, here's your final roll. So the final roll is 2 fame, 3 smash, 1 destruction, and then he goes about resolving it. All right, I'm not at the right turn yet, but I'll find it. In the meantime, I stopped even giving it a prompt. I just pasted in the roll result without any text prompt, and it said, I see my first roll with 4 heal dice, 1 special power, 1 energy die. So again, they're not even in order, so he's kind of, assembling them. So 4 heal, 1 special power, 1 energy. Claude says, I'll keep the heal dice, but re-roll and the energy die, but I'll re-roll the special power die. So here's the end result. He re-rolled the special power die, and that just came back up with a destruction, which by itself can't be used for anything. I've caught up to the action here, and so Claude has bought this electrical aura card, and that comes with a buzz token. And this is another situation where I thought the way that Claude intuited what he needed to do was pretty impressive. So I said, you have a buzz token to place from the purchase of the electrical aura card. It's a 2-space buzz token with a smash in one of the spaces and 1 die in the other space. Now with these buzz tokens, you can rotate them. So this is the buzz token, and he could have the smash on the left or the right. So now this needs to get placed somewhere on one of the tracks. So I say you can place it on the fame or destruction track, and you can rotate it so that you encounter whichever space you want to first. And so Claude says, I'll place the buzz token on the fame track, positioning it so the die space is closest to the current fame marker position and the smash space is farther away. That's a really good description, really clear of how Claude wants me to place it. It says I'll place it on my side of the track where the fame marker is already 3 spaces toward me. And by the way, what Claude did a really good job of was always knowing where these markers were and how far away they were from the center starting spot. Okay, so I'll place it on my side. This way, if I pull the fame marker further, I'll first get an extra die token and then possibly deal damage. that is really good context and situational awareness of how this game is working. It also gives us stats here, and now the stats are kind of spot on. So I'll go ahead and advance, so confirm the placement of the buzz token. So let's go and look at my final roll. And that is what I have pictured here. So it analyzes my final roll and tells me what I can do. Looks like I corrected it here. It was saying the destruction marker would move 3 spaces toward my side. In terms of the rules of the game, for each 3 you have, it moves 1 space. So it was a little off on the rules here, but it did indicate that if I get to the victory space, I'll win the game. So it knows the victory condition. Now I corrected here, and it rolls with that correction. Now, one thing that Claude did indicate that I neglected to tell Claude the new power card that had come out when it bought Electrical Aura, because every time you buy a card, a new card comes out. And it caught my attention in Claude's description, Claude's status update, that the available power cards are breaking news, sack the stadium, and plus a new card. And then I realized that I'd forgotten to describe to Claude the new power card that came out. So I said, whenever a new power card comes out, make sure I describe it to you. So I said the new power card is called Acid Attack. And then I was trying to find out if maybe there was some publicly available reference that Claude could use to try to find out the details of the Acid Attack. And Claude eventually said, I don't have specific details from the King of Tokyo Duel game in my knowledge. In the rulebook you shared, it's not described in detail. And so I need to describe the card. So it is interesting to see that from context, Claude got all the rules, it got all the information about its character from the rules, but each of the individual cards are not described in the rules. That could be an interesting exercise for the future, would be to capture all the cards and describe the rules around cards, upload all the cards to Claude, and then see if it could know what it had gotten just by me giving it the name of the card. So here I was trying to give it less information, but to correct it when it was wrong. Here's what it rolled. It's a 2 smash, 2 fame, 1 destruction, and 1 heal. And Claude said 2 smash, 3 fame, and 1 heal. So it missed that it got a destruction and 2 fame and not 3 fame. So I said that's not quite right. It came back with the same information again. So somehow it's misreading the image. It had done really well up to this point, but now it's misreading the image. And so finally I corrected it and gave it the specifics. And then it continued on with its turn in the way that it should have. Okay, and so now I'm getting close to winning the game here. Now Claude is doing very well as well. If you look here, the fame marker is now 3 spaces away from Claude winning, but I'm now 1 space away from winning with the destruction marker. This is kind of funny here. This is a situation where I made a mistake and I thought Claude was about to make a mistake. So Claude said, for my buy power cards, I'll gain 1 more energy cube. Coming into this roll, Claude had, let's see, we should be able to see it. Claude has 2 energy cubes coming into his next turn. Now when Claude gets to the point of finishing his turn, Claude said, I'll gain 1 more energy cube, bringing my total to 5 energy cubes. Now, I thought Claude was making a mistake. I thought Claude was going to end its turn with 3 energy cubes total, 2 for what it had and 1 for ending its turn. And I forgot that Claude had rolled 2 energy dice. So rather than just correct it at this point, I thought it was making a mistake. I asked it, why do you think you have 5 energy cubes? And then Claude correctly described why it thought it had 5 energy cubes, and it turned out that I was wrong. Claude actually didn't make a mistake. So I'm glad that I prompted it that way. It did make me wonder if I kind of forced a correction. I suspect that if I said, no, you actually only have 3 energy cubes, I suspect Claude would say, you're right, because that's what a lot of these models do, but maybe it wouldn't have. So kind of in my next run, I'm going to experiment with giving Claude misinformation and see how it deals with that. But Claude was ultimately right in its assessment. Oh, by the way, Claude did a smart move and was able to pull this marker back a space. So pull the marker toward him, and so now I'm 2 away from winning, and he's only 3 away from winning. So he actually tightened the race a little bit here. But let's get to the end of his turn, and you can see that it's right here that it has 5 energy cubes at the end of its turn. The very last thing I did here was I indicated that this is my final roll. I have 2 destruction markers, and I have a special power token. This die alone won't help me win the game, but I asked Claude, let's see, it said for your buy power cards phase, I had 8 energy cubes, which is exactly enough to buy Sack the Stadium. Now the Sack the Stadium card allowed me to pull the fame and the destruction marker 2 spaces. It says right here, if I were to do that, it could be a powerful move. So it recognizes what the Sack the Stadium card is going to allow me to do. I can move the fame marker 2 spaces each. And it says alternatively, I could buy different cards. So I ask, is there a way for me to win the game right now? And it says, let's analyze your possible path to victory. And it said, so yes, buying the Sack the Stadium card could very likely give you an immediate victory. Now, it actually would decisively give me the victory, and so I thought it was a little interesting that it kind of hedged its bet and used the very likely. And it says the rulebook doesn't specify exactly how many spaces away the victory spaces are, but it's likely that the 8th space would be a victory space based on the images shown in the rulebook. So it's interesting that it's able to track where the marker is from the middle. It did that a bunch of times and it was correct, but it's not 100% sure of where that victory space is. Now that may be because the buzz tokens can add extra spaces to the track, so it might have gotten a little, might have had some loss of confidence, but it was pretty close to saying that I was going to win, and in fact, I did win. And it then recognized that I reached the victory space. So while it wasn't 100% decisive, when I got to the victory space, it did recognize that I was now there. All right, so a couple of things to wrap up with here, a couple of observations. One thing is, at the end of this, I wanted to see if I couldn't create a kind of a customized GPT that I could reuse that would allow me to kind of start from a place of knowledge, right? Because Claude read the directions, it went through all this play, it got to the point where it was consistently accurate with the stats of the game. And so I asked it, well, can I kind of bundle this up into a GPT, and maybe I could share it with other people? Like, hey, if you want to play King of Tokyo Duel on Board Game Arena, use this. Well, it turns out that Claude doesn't have that feature. That's a feature of ChatGPT, and maybe I'll repeat this exercise with ChatGPT and see how well it does playing the game, but Claude doesn't have support for that yet. I could bookmark the conversation, I could take screenshots, or I could kind of start the conversation all over. It also said if you're interested in creating custom GPTs, I could, go check out Anthropic's website. So kind of the next iteration for this, I want to try this same scenario with ChatGPT. I also want to see if I can't try this using the Anthropic API, maybe in combination with something like Selenium, to give Claude in complete autonomy to be able to select its monster, do all its moves, see what its rolls are. That would be amazing. That would bring it a lot closer to the Claude Plays Pokemon. Now, I did notice one thing here. The last thing I want to do here is in the game log, it has all the move numbers. Again, this is a great feature of Board Game Arena where it keeps this log. So I may be able to jump to the specific move here. So move 93 is where I bought that stadium card, Sack the Stadium. So I'm going to see if I can't go to move 92, and then maybe we can get to that end phase. just to show you the picture of it. So I'm going to go to advanced, and I'm going to say, go to a specific move, right? I want to go to move 92. There we go. Okay, very cool. We got there at the end. So this is where I was at. This didn't really yield me anything usable. In order to pull either the Fame or Destruction token, you need 3 of the same dice. I only had 2 of each. Also, in order to use my special power, I needed at least 2 of the special power faces, the exclamation points. I only had 1, so the roll didn't actually give me anything, but I had enough energy cubes to buy the Sack the Stadium card, and the Sack the Stadium card allows me to pull each marker, Fame and Destruction, 2 spaces, and so that's what enabled me to pull the Destruction marker, those last 2 spaces, to win the game. And it's at this point that I asked Claude, what I could do, if there was a way for me to win, and it came very close to telling me decisively that I could win. So I hope you found this interesting. I hope you found it instructive. I hope you'll go to Board Game Arena and go play some games with Claude or ChatGPT and see how they do. And that's it for now. So leave us a comment, like and subscribe on the bottom button there. You know what to do. And keep an eye out for more great videos on AI. See you next time.